Hare Krishna. I'm very happy to welcome His Holiness Candramauli Swami, who has served Srila Prabhupada since 1973, inspiring people to become devotees within ISKCON prison ministry in the USA, where he began visiting prisoners and holding programs in jail, along with regularly writing letters to inmates and sending them Prabhupada's books. In his 30 years of dedication to welfare, growth, and sustainable rehabilitation of these prisoners has culminated in the book, Holy Jail, a touching compilation of activities of the ISKCON prison ministry. In 1995, he began serving as resident sannyasi in Chicago, where he was based until 2013, when he relocated to Croatia, where he currently offers spiritual guidance around Europe, USA, and India as an initiating spiritual master within ISKCON. Candramauli Swami has a relationship with Gurudev that stems from years that they've spent together in New Vrindavan and all over the world. I remember my dear uncle at most of the major festivals where Gurudev was present. Maharaj was also there, readily available, approachable, enthusiastically dancing, ever present to share Prabhupada's mercy. We enthusiastically look forward to hearing the talk entitled Die Before Dying, Bhakti Tirtha Swami's Glorious Example.
Hare Krishna. Please accept my humble obeisances to all the assembled Vaishnavas. Vanchakalpa Tarubhascha Kripa Sindhu Evacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvise Sunyavadi Pastyatya De Satarine. Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Tirtha Swami Iti Namine. Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So I'm of course nervous, but at the same time happy and inspired. A mixture of so many different moods right now. And most important is that I'm feeling honored to have a chance again, as I have in the past, to speak a little bit about the unlimited glories and activities and achievements of His Holiness Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj. Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, before I actually tried to broach the topic which was given to me, Maharaj's book, Beggar 4, Die Before Dying, I'd like to say that as time continues to move forward, as years pass and his disappearance takes on another number each year, we're up to 15 years. One thing that has gone the other way is my memory of him and the inspiration that he gave me still is very much alive in my life. It's amazing, because when you think that once a person disappears, for a few years or maybe even a little longer, they may remain prominent. But after a decade and a half, somehow the memory fades, or somehow our relationship seems to somehow or lose a little bit of that what was there before. But I can honestly say, and I say this with no remorse or no understatement, that I can actually say that my feelings and relationship with Bhakti Tirtha Swami has only increased over the years. He comes into my mind practically every day in one way or the other. And now, after being given this a little bit of an assignment to speak about Maharaj's mood before his disappearance, immediately I went to Beggar 4 and started to read. I actually read practically the whole book I wasn't planning to. I was planning to read selected sections in order to get what we say clearer and more what we say realized understanding of what he gave us. But as I was reading, I found that I couldn't put it down. It became more and more something that I wanted to read and read over and over again. His mood and the mood that brought his realizations about what he's going through and what the idea of death itself is actually, how he saw it from different angles of vision, how he presented his writings according to what a person would go through when they're actually faced with the fact that very soon they will have to leave the world. It's quite dynamic in terms of the volume, how he had presented this subject. And I'm amazed because each chapter deals with a particular aspect, which opens up more and more realizations of the feature that we all have to eventually face at one point. And that is, we have to give up the present body we're living in. But Maharaj, it's interesting because he plays two parts at the same time. He plays the part of one who realizes the transcendental truth of his situation and the principle of the soul's eternality. But at the same time, he takes it also from a part of an ordinary conditioned soul who's struggling with the idea that I have to leave this world. What will it mean to me? What will it mean to the things that are very dear to me and the people that are also very close to me? He takes it in from two different angles. In fact, he presents it more like from the material point of view, how an ordinary struggling person would go through the idea that here it is, everything that I live for and everything that I have achieved and all my plans that I haven't yet fulfilled, because we all think like that also. That's one of the features which keeps the mind still in the present, where we're still trying to see what we haven't done and what we want to do before we leave this world. So he takes that as one of the main topics, and how he understands it in relationship to what he did in the past and what is happening in the present, and what will it mean in the future, is interesting in the sense that he sees the whole thing connected in one dynamic. For instance, one of the chapters, he speaks about having gratitude for the past. And it's interesting because in the present situation, he's trying to present the idea that I had gratitude in the past for so many things that were given to me by the arrangement of the Lord, that when I reflect back on it, it gives me great happiness and great inspiration just thinking about those things. Now, of course, another person will think, well, this is what it was like in the past and how wonderful it was in the past and all the struggles I went through and all the achievements I accomplished. And that person will lament that because that was the past, it's no longer the present. But his angle of understanding is a lot different. He's trying to present or develop the consciousness that as I have appreciated what has happened to me in the past, I'm also appreciating what's happened to me in the present. And because I'm developing that same gratitude of the gifts and the achievements that I was allowed to, what we say, successfully present on behalf of my spiritual master, on behalf of the Association of Devotees, I can feel inspiration for the future. It's amazing. You know, hardly anybody would think like that. Everyone would lament about the present because they would think, well, the past was so nice and it's not any longer my present or my future won't be anything like my past. But he's even thinking that the future will even be better than the past because the inspiration from the past will also lead me to live in the present, in my present situation of preparing to leave this world, which will bring about future, we say, achievements and activities in another realm of existence. You can't be more positive than that. It's really, really beyond the normal thinking of any individual. How the future can actually be exciting when in the present you're going through the what we say the difficulties, we might use the word difficulties, of relinquishing our present existence. And for an ordinary person, or even for an ordinary devotee, that's that's tough. That's difficult. Because sometimes we find ourselves hanging on to the past and lamenting about the present and feeling uncertain about the future. But not Maharaj. Maharaj is using the past as an inspiration to stay focused in the present, and therefore understanding that by doing that, the future will bring many more achievements, many more wonderful associations, and many more opportunities to serve the Lord. It's quite extraordinary, his consciousness. Of course, let me also take it from another angle. When I was with Maharaj during the times when he was, I think it was from that period of August 2004 all the way up to the time he departed the following year in June 2005, he did have, he made an effort to keep his material body going. Why? It wasn't so much because he was trying to somehow or other do it out of fear of leaving. He still felt that, well, there's so much more preaching that I can do, and there are many more ideas I have for spreading Krishna consciousness. So I want to do that. And if Krishna takes me in a different direction, well, that's fine. That's fine. But until I understand what Krishna really wants me to do, and that came later on, we saw that later on, and Maharaj actually expressed that directly when he understood that this, me leaving the body, is actually the arrangement of Srila Prabhupada. I'll mention one story in relationship to that, which was a personal experience that I had. But before that, I just wanted to continue by saying that Maharaj, he had many more plans for spreading Krishna consciousness. And as we heard from Sachinandana Maharaj and also from His Holiness Bhakti Charu Maharaj, how dynamic and how revolutionary, I think that's the word, revolutionary his preaching was. It went into fields and areas and into lives that we had never touched as a society before. Different professions, different personalities. And I think Sachinandana Maharaj very nicely mentioned during that first disappearance celebration in New Vrindavan, how that was displayed by so many dignitaries who had appeared along with the devotees to express their personal, what we say, love, congratulations, and contributions that Bhakti Tirtha Swami made in their lives, both as a professional and at the same time as a person who brought me closer and closer to God and the practice of devotional service. I remember one such ceremony we had in Detroit, and that was the same year, 2004. I'm sorry, 2005. It was October. I think I almost remember the date, October 13th. I think Krishna Shakti, I know you were there for that ceremony. And I saw probably many of you also were there, Rajalila and Ekravarya. There was one state senator who came. He had read Bhakti Tirtha's book, Servant Leadership. I think it was volume 1, Leadership. And he spoke. And when he spoke in the most incredulous manner, in the sense that what he was trying to express was that I have never heard of the term a leader becoming a servant. How is it a leader is a leader, and those who follow the leader, they're serving the leaders? So he always saw two distinct categories. Well, Bhakti Tirtha Swami understood that whatever position one may play in whatever aspect of life one is in, and we hear that a lot in Srila Prabhupada's lecture, we can only be a servant in that capacity that the role we're trying to play. Whether we can use the example as a spiritual master. The spiritual master is one who's serving his spiritual master and actually serving his disciples by inspiring them in their advancement in Krishna consciousness. So one who sees themselves in a position of servant and knows that that's the only actual identity that one has beyond, or what we say as the central point of one's existence, and the roles we play are superfluous, and these roles can always change. But that never changes, that we are always in the mood of a servant. So when Maharaj presented that in a position of leadership to the secular world, it actually, to use a cliche, it blew people's mind. in such a way that they had to investigate further what he was actually saying. And this particular personality, this state senator, I can still remember seeing him. He kept saying it over and over again. I never thought being in a position of leadership meant being a servant, but now to me, it makes sense. So Maharaj was able to enter into the secular mentality and create an understanding that will help them perform their service better, but at the same time to understand more about who they really are. So Maharaj's disappearing from the world, or his process of disappearing from the world, I might be wrong, and I'm using a little bit of an overstatement, but it may be not be an overstatement. I think what he did in those 10 months, from the time he understood it was time to prepare to leave and do everything, and the time he actually left, he gave so much. He gave so much. Many times we think, or many times we actually see and experience how when an individual is in such a situation, health is going down, struggling with pain that comes by way of a terminal disease, and so many other, things going around. You want to kind of like recede into yourself a little bit, maybe have more time for prayer. He did that. But at the same time, in his waking hours, he was always available. If he could, if there wasn't too much pain where he could not function at all, and there were times like that. But he always wanted to be there for the devotees, guide the devotees, instruct the devotees, keep Krishna consciousness alive through classes, through dialogues, through meetings, through questions and answers. And from my memory, more devotees from around the world came to see Maharaj during those times. People who had never been to Gita Nagari actually came. And Bhakti by Baba Maharaj from Germany, I think it was one of his first times to Gita Nagari, came just to meet Maharaj, just to be with Maharaj. And others were also there. So Maharaj is what we say, what's the word? Coming out. He came out more in a very, what we say, spiritual way, just to keep the devotees connected to Krishna consciousness through his personal association and through his personal example of showing this is how we leave the body. Srila Prabhupada was the same way. He wanted to give as much of his personal association to the devotees. And there's an element that is beyond the idea of instructions that comes with that. And I think Maharaj understood that clearly, is that in these difficult times when the devotees know our spiritual master will not be with us, at least from the personal realm any longer, they want to get as much association as they can. And Maharaj gave that in order to create a greater endearance. And what that endearance does, it brings about more of a connection on the spiritual platform, where the devotee becomes more serious in their practice of Krishna consciousness. Of course, that's not an absolute thing. And we saw that after Maharaj did disappear, some devotees went down. Some went down temporarily and came back up strong. Others kind of faded in the background and still remained in that way. But Maharaj also said, and he said, one of the reasons the spiritual master does leave is to strengthen the serious devotees and make them even more committed to Krishna consciousness, where they become more surrendered and provide more and more service to the society and to the spiritual master. The devotees who are on the medium level, who are somewhat committed but not, they actually go up. They become more serious now. And those who are never been really, they're attached to the guru based on just the idea of the principle of personality and not to the instructions, more attached to the idea of who he is, but not so much what he's giving, they somehow or other fall away. And so Maharaj also said that for the spiritual master does leave to cut away such insincere personalities. Of course, that's kind of sad, but it's a lesson that we should never see the spiritual master as one who simply is a personality. He is a personality, but he represents the entire disciplic succession. He represents Krishna in the life of his devotee, and he represents the path back home, back to Godhead. So that's the clear understanding of what the spiritual master is there for, and not somebody who is just, from what we see from him in terms of the external features that he gives. And so, but back to this other point that I wanted to make, and this was really a powerful experience that I had, because I had a little doubt. Maharaj, at one point, and I think maybe most of you remember, I know Rajalila remembers, and Ekavirya, many of them who were very close to Maharaj during his last 10 months or so. Maharaj at once had said, Prabhupada is calling me. So I was thinking, that's nice. I wasn't sure how I should take it, whether that's an idea that he had or whether it's an actual fact and he is actually connecting with Prabhupada. I mean, Prabhupada's telling him that I have other services for you outside of where you're serving now. And so I accepted it based on the fact that he said it, but it didn't go deep with me. It remained on the surface. But I remember clearly, this was the day before he left. I was in Cleveland, and I was staying at the house of Abhaduta and Agnihotra. And if you remember their temple room, there's pictures of Prabhupada throughout the whole temple room. There's just photos of Srila Prabhupada everywhere. So, and this was we were all kind of anticipated that Maharaj will leave soon. So I was chanting japa in the temple room. And I was starting to remember what he had said, what Prabhupada was calling. And as I was thinking that, and not to put myself in any special position, Prabhupada came to me. And he came to me in his voice and he said, yes, I am calling him. And when I heard that, I knew what he was saying was no doubt. And then I became, what we say, enlightened to understand, yes, Prabhupada is calling him. He has another mission for him somewhere else. Obviously, he's so qualified that Prabhupada wants to use him in another area to spread Krishna consciousness. And this is another feature of a great devotee. Because there is a conversation with Tamal Krishna Goswami and Srila Prabhupada, and a few devotees are there. And Tamal Krishna Goswami asked Srila Prabhupada, are there some devotees who don't go back home to Godhead? They stay in the material world to preach somewhere in the material world, life after life. And Prabhupada got so animated. He became so enlivened by that statement. And immediately, as soon as the statement was finished, he said, yes, yes, there are devotees and they are very special. All they want to do is they want to serve Krishna by bringing more and more conditioned souls to the lotus feet of the Lord in devotional service. So I saw that mood in Bhakti Tirtha Swami always. When he was in his best, what we say, health, he was always traveling, preaching, bringing devotees in. He was a devotee person. This was the amazing thing. He gave his life to the devotees. He gave his life to people in general. And to somehow or other be an instrument to bring them into Krishna consciousness more and more. And he took that with him all the way up to the final days when he finally departed the world. He was always somehow or other meeting devotees, inspiring devotees, preaching to the devotees, giving his association to the devotees, always with the idea of enlivening them and giving them confidence that if you stay in Krishna consciousness, ultimately you will be happy, you will be successful, you'll go back to the spiritual world. Maharaj was always very positive. I think Sachinandana Maharaj said that very night. He was never negative or what we say critical. Of course, being highly intellectual and understanding situations, he was very analytical and could see a situation clearly. And he wrote about it, he spoke about it, but he always saw a solution in the philosophy of Krishna consciousness that he wanted to somehow apply to the situations that were coming, especially in the lives of the devotees. The thing that really would caused him a kind of unhappiness. It was a true unhappiness when he saw when the devotees were not being treated nicely, when the devotees were not giving the facility they needed to serve in Krishna consciousness, when devotees were having trouble and not getting the care and the support they needed to overcome their situation. This bothered him. It bothered him so much that even from his heart, he was always expressing how to somehow or other make a difference and change things in the lives of the devotees. And he preached as to our society. We should be more concerned about caring for and taking care of devotees. And I think ever since his departure and the seed that he planted in that mood of devotee care, it's grown. I think now, and Bhakti Tirtha Swami he also said that. He said a lot of things, many of the things that I've given you now will start to happen in the future once I leave. He was also quite prophetic, understanding that yes, what he was offering was actually genuine Krishna consciousness, Vaishnava Seva in its, what we say, in its complete aspect of Vaishnava Seva. Another of the principles that he somehow or other approaches, or what we say, brings forth in his book, there's two things I'm thinking of. There's one chapter where, and this is interesting, there are two parties, the party that wants him to stay and the parties that want him to leave. So there's a dialogue, he sets up this dialogue where my friends, my family, relatives, my associates, my disciples, my well-wishers want me to stay. And they're praying, they're crying, they're doing whatever they can to show how much they want me to stay. And they express their love for me in many ways, and I can see that. But then there's another set of people, he uses the word, another set of living entities who are in a different realm, who are telling me, now it's time to come. Here, we have service for you here. So which one should I listen to? So he presents the dilemma. Who am I supposed to live? They're both sincere. They're both well-wishers. They both are coming from the heart. They're coming from intelligence. What do I do? And where does he take the solution to? He says, I leave it up to my spiritual master. At the lotus feet of my spiritual master, I present this dilemma. Some want me to stay, others want me to go. What do I do? Guru Dev, you decide. And after going through the different exchanges between himself and the different living entities on both levels, he ends each of those exchanges with, at the lotus feet of my spiritual master is the solution to this question. Only he can decide, and whatever he decides will be the decision. So I thought that was quite interesting. Usually we don't listen so much to the higher realms, we listen to what's going on in this level, because this is where we are. But he was actually tuning in on both levels and not knowing which one is the one that he should adhere to, or at least put his energy towards. And so, of course, it's logical that we actually relinquish these, what we say, dilemmas, and present it to the lotus feet of the spiritual master, knowing that we'll get the best answer. That reminds me of a personal situation. Can I speak about one personal thing that he did in my life? It's a little bit off of the die before dying thing, but it's somewhat related to this principle of diverting our decisions to higher authorities. And that's something that was happening to me in my own life, where I was in a dilemma in terms of my service. I had this service of running a preaching center in Cincinnati, Ohio, in America. And the center was doing okay. We were, so gloriously preaching, but we were regularly having programs and doing events, and devotees were coming. And then right during that time, I had accepted the order of sannyas. So then it became a concern a little bit later, a few years later, whether in the role of a sannyasi, one of the main principles of sannyas is travel and preach. Not only preach, but to travel and preach. Prabhupada writes, every town and village, city to city, country to country, one should travel and preach Krishna consciousness for the sannyas order. So it was presented to me that as a sannyasi, you should go out preaching. That would be better for you, and you could probably and give you a chance to develop more your ashram instead of trying to manage a preaching center at the same time doing all the chores of the preaching center, cooking, cleaning, doing all these other things, which I was doing. And so I thought, okay, I remember Chaitanya Mahaprabhu when he wanted to leave for South India. He didn't just leave, he consulted with his devotees, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, Ramananda Roy, and others, Sarup Damodar. And getting their, what we say, permission to leave. But they didn't give him permission to leave. So Mahaprabhu wound up staying there another year because they wanted him to stay. But the principle was that any major decision that one is confronted with in one's life should be offered to higher authorities, so we know once we make the decision, if something goes wrong, it doesn't matter because this is the right thing I'm doing. Devotees sometimes get stuck like that, where they act independently of higher authority, and then something goes wrong based on their own ideas, and then they don't know whether I made the right decision or not. But with higher authority, sanction, blessings, permission, it doesn't matter what goes right or wrong according to our understanding, but because it's been blessed by a higher authority, it's the right thing to do. So I understood that, so I had to make a decision whether to keep the preaching center open or go out and preach. So I was asking different senior devotees, and some were saying, well, people are coming, preaching center is important. There was nobody to take over the center once you leave, so you should keep it open. Others were saying, no, you're in that ashram, you should go out and preach. This will be good for you. So I was hearing the same thing from different devotees, one side, the other side. So I thought, all right, what to do? So I was waiting to hear that sound vibration that would inspire me to make the decision. So one day I came to Washington, D.C. Maharaj was there. He was in his preaching center. I think what was in that F Street? Was it called F Street? I'm not sure what it was. Yeah. And he was in his office sitting upstairs, and I came, it was in the evening. I explained my situation. He sat there, he listened, didn't ask any questions, just listened to what I had to say. took a few moments, and then he did something quite, what we say, very animated. He got up from his seat, waved his arm all the way high in the air and said, "Go out and preach." It was not just the words, it was the exclamation of bodily absorption in the whole thing. Go out and preach. And so I thought, all right, that's it. Krishna, you spoke. I got the message. There's no doubt now. I don't care what anybody else says. I'm not going to change. This is it. I'm sure I heard your voice through Bhakti Tirtha Swami. And so I did. And I think I made the right decision. I'm pretty sure I did. So that reminded me of how he was also trying to decide whether, well, there are two groups. One wants me to stay. The other one wants me to go to another realm to preach. So I leave it up to my spiritual master. Maharaj gave us so much in his living, in his departure, and even now, I'm seeing that what he gave to all the devotees who were very much surrendered to him, close to him, I'm seeing their own spiritual growth. It's amazing. I'm coming in contact with so many of the disciples of Bhakti Tirtha Swami in different places. Here in Croatia, there's a good amount. And I'm seeing that actually many of them are doing wonderful service, preaching, making devotees, inspiring others, and being a great example for their spiritual master in the lives of others. So, and Maharaj also said that once I leave, many of my disciples will actually do wonderful preaching. Another part of this beggar situation, where he's, dialoguing with his mind or with a created, what we say, second person, but now he's dialoguing with the soul. And this is I found this one really interesting. The soul and the principle of death. And he's speaking to the soul, and the soul is mostly speaking to him. That why are you afraid of death? Death is a part of life. Actually, we'll actually come together completely once you leave this mortal coil which you now inhabit. Because this ephemeral existence, which you're still hanging on to, he's using this as a rhetoric, is not you. The real you is me. And so we will become one, and we will become in other words, what you are seeing as duality is not duality. It's simply this created duality in the form of your material existence, which you've had for so many lives, and you had so many deaths. But make this departure from this ephemeral, illusionary reality your last death, and then you'll understand me and my relationship with you. And then so two become one into the soul. So in using a dialogue, in order to dialogue with oneself, using the soul and the mind as two different persons, the soul is defeating all the arguments that one may have about the idea of death. But the mind says, using that, well, there's pain, death is painful. Yes, but the soul says there is so much you can learn by this pain. And don't worry, this pain is temporary. It'll pass, but it'll be an opportunity to learn so much about me. You can learn more about me in the process of suffering, the relinquishing of this body. So it'll be a great opportunity to learn more about our relationship. So I found that really, really amazing how he did this dialogue between the soul and the mind, the conditioned mind, going back and forth about the fear of death. So after reading that, I thought, wow, whatever fear of death I had, at least during the moment when I was reading that, I was getting inspiration. Wow, this is really exciting. He made death sound really exciting. Like, wow, something to look forward to. We can learn so much. We can actually be ourselves on the spiritual platform. So I was thinking, whoa, this was very creative how he did that. And ultimately, the soul wins in every argument, whether it's leaving behind friends and relatives, or whether it's suffering the pain of physical discomfort, or it's entering into the realm of the unknown, or whatever. It's always, the soul is always showing that death is not only something we should fear, but something we should welcome. As I remember, His Holiness Radhanath Swami was speaking to one personality who was leaving her body, and she was expressing a little bit of unhappiness, that she was feeling a little fearful about death. Well, Maharaj, I can still remember, he said, death is the gateway to eternal life. It's the gateway to eternal life. And then, yeah, it's clear that eternal life is waiting for us when we no longer have any desire to try to find any kind of happiness or what we say comfort or facility on this realm of the material existence, which is ephemeral, mutable, always changing, and ultimately, in the absolute sense, is something, the only thing we can define our material existence is that it is there to rectify our deviant mentality so we can actually attain our spiritual consciousness. Well, Maharaj is very positive and looking forward to the opportunity to experience his next existence in the spiritual realm. So this display of Die Before Dying, which came in the form of a book, really takes the idea of preparing, welcoming, appreciating, and reflecting on life itself and the process of pure devotional service. I think that in that book there's so much knowledge, and so much wisdom, not knowledge, but wisdom on what the soul really is and what the soul can actually achieve when it actually accepts the will of Krishna as being the absolute principle in one's life. Maharaj is really amazing. And everything he did was dynamic. Everything he did was never half-hearted. I think Bhakti, Sachinandana Maharaj said, Maharaj was always serious. Serious in the sense that he used every moment to spread Krishna consciousness. I remember when we were in Gita Nagari, when he was trying to inspire the devotees to take up self-sufficiency and get involved with agriculture and development of the land, he put on his orange colored overalls. I really remember those overalls that were, sannyas overalls with straps going across. And he would be out there, digging away in the dirt just to inspire all of us to do the same. And that he was an acharya in that sense. Acharya means one who teaches by example. So he not only gave instructions, but he also showed how to carry out the instructions in his personal life. And so I really appreciated that. And I remember I came one day and I don't know how much digging I did, but I was out there anyway. That was a nice experience. But this, I think every devotee, even if you read this Beggar 4, you have to read it again. I mean, I had read it when it first came out, and I think I probably looked through it since then. But ever since Chitty Shakti told me that this is what my class was going to be about, I really got into it, and it was like reading it for the first time. There were so many amazing things that Maharaj presents for a person who's about to leave the body, because you know, when we think in terms of what is the worst thing that can happen to a person, and that is death. That's probably the worst thing that anything can happen. But that's seen in relationship to the values that we have in this world. When we don't have any material values to try to fulfill, or desires to try to fulfill, then death has a whole different experience, a whole different understanding in our life. And I guess one of the last things I'd like to say, just a little note, which Maharaj did, I don't think anyone has ever done it before, is that when one is leaving the body, they usually go to the designated holy places like Mayapur or Vrindavan or some place in India, some holy place. Well, Maharaj says, no, I want to leave my body in Gitanagari. Why? Because Gitanagari is a Tirtha. Why? Because Srila Prabhupada came here. Srila Prabhupada preached here. Srila Prabhupada gave many instructions on how we should develop Gitanagari. It was very dear to Srila Prabhupada. So I want to show that any place that Srila Prabhupada went is a holy Tirtha. So to leave our body in a place that Srila Prabhupada came and preached and inspired Krishna consciousness is a holy Tirtha. It's a place that one can see on the absolute platform. Why? Because the pure devotee has established it and the pure devotee has glorified it. So I thought that was something that was, for me, quite amazing, how he had decided to leave the world in Gitanagari. And that's one of the glorious things about Gitanagari, that Maharaj gave his personal association to all the devotees. If he would have went to Mayapur in India, how many of us could have come and actually been with him during those last moments? It wasn't possible for everyone just to get on a plane and get a plane ticket and be there. So, but he maximized his mercy by giving his association to the devotees all the way up to the end. And I'll never forget that evening from 3:35 p.m. on June 27th to 3 o'clock a.m. on June 28th. We stayed the whole time. For me, that's a very memorable occasion. It's a chutney, it's sad, of course, but at the same time, it was glorious because it brought the devotees together in such a wonderful way to glorify Bhakti Tirtha Swami. So I will, I guess I could stop here because we have done an hour.
Thank you so much. I love the way that you described the final moments and days as like a chutney. That was a really excellent culmination because that's, I think, what many of us experience. Like, we're so happy, excited, but then at the same time, we're like, no, yes. And so, but it just transcendental emotions and multiple.
Yeah, we're excited because we know that where he's going to be happy. We're really excited for his own happiness, but at the same time, we see on this level there's a loss in our life.
Yes. No, definitely. Definitely. All right. We're going to let some questions come in. All right. So, I have some wonderful memories of yourself with Maharaj and Kirtan. Could you share some of your favorite Kirtan experiences with His Holiness Bhakti Tirtha Swami?
Whoa. Well, many of them were at Gita Nagari. But there was one, somebody just sent me, one of my disciples from London. His name is Janaki Nath. He sent me this rare video that I had never seen before. It was a great festival in Chowpatty, Bombay, Radhanath Swami's preaching area. It was a big, big festival. There were many, many senior devotees around the world that came. And Bhakti Tirtha Swami was leading the kirtan. And wow, this video clip was like Maharaj is singing, and he's singing, and then he was singing Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare. So after you finish the whole mantra, then everyone sings together, and then somebody dances. So he was dancing like, wow. I was just watching that video and I was thinking, whoa, yeah, that's the way he dances. It's so inspiring. So, and then he's dancing, and then after the next mantra, he grabs me. I'm there, and he throws me in the middle, and he says, now you got to dance. So I did. And I don't remember what I did, but I was kind of crazy. And then right after that, Radhanath Swami's, he grabs Radhanath Swami and pushes him gently into the center, and Maharaj dances. And I could see, like, the devotees were so animated during that kirtan. It was one of the really powerful kirtans. But the ones I can remember mostly are the ones of Gita Nagari, where Maharaj would do the snake dance. You can always remember that. We'd grab onto each other's shoulders and kind of meander throughout the temple room, going this way and that way. And the Maharaj would sometimes throw in a few extra steps just to get everybody aligned. But yeah, there was so many. In Chicago, the Maharaj used to come to Chicago, and I would be there. There was one beautiful kirtan with Bhakti Tirtha Swami, Siki Mahiti, and myself. I still have pictures of that kirtan when we were all dancing together. But Maharaj was a facilitator, although he would dance, but he was always inspiring others to dance. And there was one kirtan which I loved to watch. It was about an hour. It was happened in Chicago. I wasn't there personally, but it was right after the Sunday feast when everyone the lecture was over, the kirtan was over, some devotees had gone to the feast. Maharaj stayed and did kirtan there, and a handful of devotees stayed. And Maharaj led another kirtan that went on for an hour. And gradually, people were coming back from the feast and joining in. And it's the most wildest, unbelievable. Even what our my dear friend and the disciple of Bhakti Tirtha Swami, um, let me think of his name, Murari Gupta. Oh, he was dancing too. He was in his 70s, maybe late 70s, and you could see him dancing. I was thinking, whoa, Maharaj got everyone so fired up in that particular kirtan. So we danced a lot. We danced in Mayapur, we danced in, I think every one of the kirtans that I was in with him was an experience. It was always an experience. Because he was such a graceful dancer. For him, dancing was just like walking, you know, it was like natural. It was kind of effortless. But sometimes he would put a lot of super energy into it, and then the place would just take off. When he threw all his energy into the kirtan, everybody would went wild. It was just like, whoa. But those were the days when I was a little less shy. I was more shy about dancing. I think some of his association in kirtan kind of pulled that out of me. That I lost a little bit of my shyness when I was with him. But there were so many experiences that were just really memorable. I mean, he did kirtan in the most joyful way. It was always joyful. Always joyful.
Thank you. Yes, I know. Well, continuing on that note, what is one of your favorite memories, and what are your favorite qualities about Maharaj, as well as what is the most important lesson that you feel that you've learned from Bhakti Tirtha Swami?
I think one of his most important qualities is his compassion for those who are struggling, suffering, or just in general. His compassion towards his God brothers, his compassion towards his disciples, his compassion to people in general. That was a deep quality. Sometimes that's mentioned a lot in the biography, and how he was concerned about how people were suffering and what he could do to try to relieve the sufferings of others. I remember one time we were in Gita Nagari, and I was also there, and devotees were coming to meet him quite regularly throughout the day. So this was a regular thing throughout the whole day. He was meeting different groups and different devotees. So at the end, we were together, and I was just kind of reflecting on, the day, and I said, Maharaj, you're meeting so many devotees. They all come to you for inspiration, for help. What do you say to them? What do you say to them? So I was thinking, he has something that he was going to say. He said, I don't really say so much. I let them speak. Because most of the time, because they have problems, they find it hard for people to really empathize and to sympathize with them. And people don't want to listen, or they can't find people to listen to hear. So I'm there for them. It's just so they can express themselves. And I do say something, but mostly I let them speak. And he says, by letting them speak, they feel valued. They feel someone cares, and that's what I really want to inspire people to understand, that we care. I care about them, and so by allowing them to speak, this is what I do. So I did. His quality of compassion, I think, is one of the most amazing qualities that he had. He was very compassionate, and then that was his motivation for preaching too. Sometimes people are motivated for whatever things that preaching can bring to one's personal, but he was motivated in the principle of compassion. I saw that a lot. He wanted to make devotees happy. He wanted to relieve devotees of their suffering, whatever problems they had, whatever situations. He had an ability to do that in such a quick, and what we say, well, it may take others a long time to somehow make a change in people's life. He could instantaneously create a positive feeling or some kind of inspiration in a person's life just by being with them for a while. And I saw that. I think we all had that experience. When devotees came, they would leave feeling that he really helped me, especially at the end. He did that a lot. So that was one of the outstanding things one of the outstanding qualities that I remember about Maharaj was his compassion, especially for those who were struggling for suffering. Memorable moments. I think one of those memorable moments is when he inspired me to go out and preach and take up the activities of a traveling sannyasi. That was really memorable for me. I think our dancing together was the most memorable. Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing. Yes. Gonna go to the next question. So 2020 has been difficult for many people. What do you think Gurudev's response would be to the current challenging times?
I would think that he would see the opportunities to spread Krishna consciousness. I think he always saw every situation as an opportunity to bring Krishna consciousness into the lives of others. I think even now, where people are more pressed for an answer to today's struggles, Krishna consciousness becomes more and more of a subject matter where people will grab onto. I think he would be positive in the sense that he would be thinking of different ways to reach people even more so now. I don't think he would be negative at all. And the fact that for a devotee, the principle is every situation always has an opportunity to spread Krishna consciousness. And he saw that in any and every situation to make a difference. And I think he would also be an inspiration to get devotees who are not doing so much now that their lives have changed. Some of their extracurricular activities are being cut away by their limited amounts of freedom, by being restricted. I think he would try to inspire more and more devotees to get out of the comfort zone and get out there and find ways to give the conditioned souls Krishna consciousness. I think he would focus on people who are a little bit laid back in general, or maybe say sidetracked by so many other things, and now those other things are not there anymore. So now he would be an inspiration to move them into the area of giving Krishna consciousness to others. That's my understanding, I think. He would look towards the devotees and see how to inspire them to do more in this situation, especially for those now that had more time on their hands.
Thank you, Maharaj. We have another question that is talking about your pastimes with Maharaj in Chicago. Since Bhakti Tirtha Swami would specifically go there often to see you and spend time Can you remember any other pastimes there?
Chicago?
Yes.
Well, I don't know if this is a pastime, but I can speak something. Um, Everyone knows Bhakti Tirtha Swami's, well, not everyone, but I think we all know he liked pizza and ice cream. Is that an overstatement? No, no, it's not an overstatement. And so I was there in Chicago, and he was out doing some programs in the local area, and I was at the temple. So he came back, and he hadn't practically eaten the whole day. And so it was around 9 o'clock, 8:30, 9 o'clock at night. So we had prasadam ready for him. We had the regular, you know, prasadam, just regular prasadam for him. So he was happy to honor the prasadam. So he had finished. And so um, someone came in right after that with pizza and ice cream, just right after he had finished. And Maharaj said, always room for pizza and ice cream. So I thought, yes, he's honoring prasadam and not refusing. So I was thinking, yes, I don't know if I could do it, but he did. And he honored the pizza and ice cream. I would spend more time in Gitanagari with him than he would spend with me in Chicago. Of course, when he came to Chicago, he usually came for some reasons for preaching. We had preaching events throughout the Chicago area with other groups that he was doing. And then so we would connect then. But sometimes he would just come to visit the temple and give classes. One thing that blew my mind, you know, Maharaj, he could put you on the spot, right? He could force you to give up your attachments right on the spot. So he was giving a Bhagavatam class, and he was talking about, you know, we have to get rid of our personal attachments and arthas, things that are holding us back in Krishna consciousness, something about us that we don't want, or something about us that we shouldn't want, but we're not aware we have. So he said, let's do a little exercise. We'll break up into groups, and there'll be two people together, and each person has to ask the other person, what's wrong with me? So you have to ask your partner, what is it about me that's not good? Whoa! I was thinking, I'm not sure if I can play this one. This is like a little bit beyond my, surrender level. So, but he was serious about it, and not everybody was able to take part in it because some people just couldn't do it. But some of us did, and but he presented it in a way like you could learn something about yourself, because we don't always see about things about ourselves that we don't really like or need. So other people can see it easily than we can see it. So using that principle, we can understand more about ourselves. So that was basically the principle, that others can help us get rid of the things that we need to get rid of.
Thank you.
That happened in Chicago.
We have more pastimes coming about you and Maharaj, and people are inquiring about the dancing of Gurudev during the sannyas initiation in New Vrindavan.
Maharaj's sannyas initiation.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't personally there. I think His Holiness Radhanath Swami will be coming on later on today. He was personally there. But I only heard from Radhanath Swami himself that Maharaj was so inspired by the whole ceremony and the fact that now he had accepted the renounced order of life, that when the kirtan went on, he danced really exuberantly. To use an understatement. He was dancing really high energy, and his dhoti fell off. Now you would think, well, this is not good. And so what do you do if you're in that situation? And but Maharaj kept dancing. And so later on, this is why I recall, I might get some of the details wrong, but this is what I remember hearing from His Holiness Radhanath Swami, that Maharaj asked him, why, when your dhoti fell off, why did you keep dancing? He said, well, the Goswamis, they, they only had kopans, so something like that. So I think, of course, when his dhoti did fall off, somebody came and, helped him put it back on again. But he wasn't the one to initiate that. So I think he was in a little bit of absorbed in the whole program, and he pretty much was a little, not oblivious, but somewhat unconcerned about what was happening around. I don't know if that really glorifies him at all, but anyway, Maharaj was, what we say, unique.
Right. We have another question talking about, speaking of Gurudev eating pizza and ice cream. Were you there when Bhakti Tirtha Swami won the Gulabjamun eating contest at New Vrindavan? Someone has a memory, but they don't remember the story in full details, and just wondered if you had more details.
I'm not sure whether it was New Vrindavan or St. Louis, but I think, again, this is hearsay, it's something I heard. He was in competition, and these weren't like these tiny, these were the full-size Gulabjamans. So they were going, and they had reached 86 Gulabjamans. And it was a tie between him and one other devotee. I don't remember who the other devotee was. So they had reached 86 Gulabjamans each. So this other person decided, well, he's going to win. So he took 87, and then he wanted to really make a statement, so he took another one, 88. Well, that statement brought about some kind of reaction that's not so pleasant. I'll just leave the ending to you. You can figure it out from there. So Maharaj won by default. So yeah, but he actually won. So yeah, those were the old days when we used to have these competitions. I entered one myself. I think I got up to something like 30 Gulabjamans, and I thought, all right, if I take any more, I'm going to be in a new body soon. So
we have another question. This is from Devaki Preeti. She says, thank you very much, Maharaj. What do you think Gurudev would advise for the younger generation to do during this time? How do you think he would instruct us? Thank you.
The younger generation, upcoming generation, it's a time for change. It's a time for reevaluation of our values and our directions in life, and seeing how we can maximize our time more to be an inspiration in ourselves and for others in Krishna consciousness. I don't think we can come up with some kind of amazing statement about something to do other than that he would evaluate the situation as an opportunity for growth. And it is. It's more, this whole situation of restricted movements is an opportunity for both more preaching. I generally don't preach every day, but ever since March 17th, no, I'm sorry, March 22nd, I've been giving classes every day since March 22nd, sometimes 2 classes a day, sometimes 3 classes a day. I can't keep up with 3 classes. 2 is even a little difficult, but sometimes we do it. But every day there's an opportunity to speak. So more and more opportunities to reach people with Krishna consciousness. And this media is really coming forward to show that, hey, here's the way to do it. But as a younger generation, we're still formulating our directions in life, how we want to live our life, how we want to act and react, what position we're looking for within the world, within Krishna consciousness. It's a time for what we say reflections on where we are and where we want to go. A lot of times we don't have time for that because we're too busy. We say we're sometimes too busy. We're too busy living that we haven't actually begun to live yet. We're busy in the activities of life, but we haven't actually begun to live. So evaluating, reflecting, planning, seeing what association we can gather in order to move forward in our Krishna consciousness, looking towards the positive. And whether we like it or not, the world situation is forcing us to change. Change maybe a little bit, not so much what we're doing, but how we're doing what we're doing. Maybe how we're relating to others too. I think people are appreciating each other more now during this time because now we see we need each other more than we did before. In times of crisis, the association of others becomes one of the things that gives us greater happiness and greater security and greater, what we say, opportunities in our own activities in life. I think I'm feeling more like that when I get a chance to associate with devotees, I'm appreciating that association more and more than I had before. So I think we can all gain from that.
Thank you very much, Maharaj. This has been a wonderful, wonderful discussion and just going into different pastimes and going over Bigger Four and reminding us to revisit and listen and read and delve into a lot of his reflections and realizations that now, as we read it again, I'm sure it's going to impact us differently. So just thank you so much for being a part, and we're very, very grateful to have you here.
Thank you. My obeisances to all of you, and I thank all the devotees who organized this, who did such wonderful service in bringing Bhakti Tirtha Swami's mood, his life, his accomplishments, and his memories into the lives of many, many hundreds of devotees around the world. Thank you very much. It's really great service.
Maharaj, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Just on behalf of our God family, actually around the world, in the comments section in the chat room, there was so much sharing of times that you've inspired devotees here in their Krishna consciousness, but also their relationship with Gurudev. I can personally say that throughout, you've always been there for us, in a fatherly way, but also just ready to kind of muck in with us, and always just overflowing with affection, love and devotion and Krishna consciousness. So we're just so grateful and so happy that you agreed to do this session with us. Thank you so much. I'm just going to share some announcements, if you don't mind. Those of you who are hearing this for the 5th time, please bear with us. I know there's many of you who have joined for the first time, so it is important that there are some important things I'd like to let you know about. So the first thing I would like to let you know about is this evening is our final session for the retreat at 6 o'clock UK time. So in New York it will be 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and in India it will be 10:30 at night. We'll be joined by His Holiness Radhanath Maharaj, who will be speaking about the life and legacy of Bhakti Tirtha Swami. So this will be on Zoom, but because we have limited capacity on Zoom, it would also be live streamed on Facebook through the InterIFAST page. That'll be posted in the chat room now. And it will also be live streamed on YouTube through Radha Gopinath Temple's YouTube channel. And that's also going on to the chat room now. So whichever platform is your preference. We advise devotees who are on the call now to try and come a little bit earlier for that session. If you can come in about even 30 minutes to 20 minutes before it starts, to secure your place in Zoom, because we're not really able to use the other platforms to ask questions. This is the place to ask your questions. So please, I know a lot of the God family are here, so just try and join a bit earlier. And last but not least, just to let you know, if you don't already know, btswami.com is the place to go if you would like to read Maharaj's books or know where to get them from, which is Amazon. I'll tell you a bit more about the books in a minute, but you'll be able to get his audio books there. You'll be able to get classes and videos, and it's all been revamped very beautifully by Nandasunu Prabhu, who's also been doing all the technical work to make sure that all of these events are going on live, on time, and working smoothly. And very wonderfully, our God Sister Nanda Vrindavan Devidasi, she has actually only recently recorded her audiobook of Gurudev's Beggar 4. So that is also now in our audiobook section on btswami.com. So as I mentioned earlier, if we go to Amazon, whichever your local Amazon URL is, I think Peter Pavan has already posted it in the chat room as well. We have all of Maharaj's books available there in print and on Kindle. Now everything's available on print because of this wonderful service of Amazon Print on Demand. So we're no longer reliant on having bulk printing and it being in a storehouse. Just if you need a printed copy of one of Maharaj's books, it will be available through Amazon. And we have Agni Prabhu and Janan Prabhu to thank for setting that all of it up, and also Bhuta Bhavna for actually being the driving force and encouraging everybody to get that going. So thank you. And last but not least, thank you for your generous contributions to trying to secure Gurudev's house, the house that he left this world in, the house where he had so many pastimes with so many of you, the house where he wrote many of these books, and the house which continues to be used for programs and for accommodating sannyasis and senior disciples and senior devotees. So our offering this year for his 15th anniversary was to acquire that property on his behalf completely with no mortgage. And we are almost there. We're 80% of the way there. We have 2 more weeks to go. And the link is in the chat room. So thank you already for your contributions. And if you'd like to make a contribution and haven't already done so, like I said, the link is in the chat room. So our next session starts in 2.5 hours. So we'll have a little bit of a break now. Thank you so much, Maharaj. Again, thank you so much. Would you like to say any final words?
Haribo!
Haribo.
Shri Bhakti Tirtha Swami Maharaj Ki!
Yay!
Hare Krishna.
Bhuta Bhavana Prabhu!
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Thank you for a wonderful class. Hare Krishna.
Thank you for all great devotees of Bhakti Tirtha Swami. It's nice to see you all and be inspired by your presence. Thank you.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.